needed. Thank you, Robin. Um, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our June 18th Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Commissioner Kelly is here with us remotely. Commissioner Willie is not with us this evening for this meeting, so you're here with just the four of us. We've got a little bit of a crowd today, so welcome everybody. If you need a little caffeine boost, there's some coffee back there. And there are also paper copies of the agenda back there for anybody in person, and a full packet is available on our website. Reviewing our full agenda, first we will consider our consent agenda, which has, it looks like, 8 items in total this evening. After that, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues that are not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we apply certain rules regarding public comments. We will do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we will accept public comment of any length in writing. Individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. All comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission, and we reserve the right to mute and remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during public comment period is not allowed. Please give your full name and residence for our meeting minutes and address your comments to the commission. We will hear from people in person first. Then we'll look to our Zoom meeting attendees. Please use the raise your hand function online if you wish to provide your public comment virtually. Please also know that any comments received by the commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we do value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comments on the spot, but if you leave your contact information with county staff, we will try and get specific questions answered. After general public comment section concludes, we will move on to our regular business agenda for tonight, which we have got 2 items and presentations to discuss. And for each action item, we will hear from staff first or an applicant, if applicable, and then followed by questions from the commission. We will open the floor for public comment that is relevant to that item specifically. And once public comment is concluded, we'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion and a vote on action items as needed. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. And with that, we'll jump right into our consent agenda. Commissioners, does anybody wish to remove anything for further discussion or questions?
I don't, unless Kevin wants to get up and say a few words, but no, I'm good.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorsey. Commissioner Kelly, any from you?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and I'll highlight that Peaslee Tech is here to ask for some changes in their bylaws and are working towards some real sustainable efforts for their organizational structure. So glad to have you here. Thanks, Kevin. But if you don't want to pull that, I think we'll go ahead and just open that up to the public. Does anybody else wish to pull anything from the consent agenda that's here today? Any virtual hands, Sarah? Okay, we'll close that and bring it back for a motion.
This is Gene Dorsey. I move we approve consent agenda items 1.1 through 1.8.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who are here for that agenda item. Have a good rest of your evening. And with that, we'll move on to general public comment. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to provide comment? Come on up, John.
John Ems, Lawrence. First of all, I wanted to thank the commissioners for having Jill and Dustin spend several hours with me earlier this week. That we were discussing the homeless program and the development of associated success metrics. I think the exchange of ideas was useful, and the insights they provided regarding challenges and future endeavors were very helpful. Homeless program transparency is important to citizens who are following these initiatives. On another topic, last night, the Lawrence City meeting introduced their capital improvement plan. There was considerable citizen feedback regarding city debt. For the first time that I know of, commissioners were quite open about the risk of losing federal and state grant money. Commissioner Sellers in particular spoke of the need to determine the kind of community services and values the city can afford on its own recognizance. Understanding that the city and county are financially interlinked and both depend on federal state grants, it would seem prudent that the county go through a similar exercise during this budget season. If the city loses grant dollars and then the county is likely to lose for the same reasons. It would be prudent to tally the budget funds that include grant dollars and determine what happens to the multi-year projects that are dependent upon grant funding. As stated by Commissioner Sellers last night, it's important to educate citizens regarding the trade-offs that would result under these conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to provide general public comment? All right, seeing no takers, any virtual hands, Sarah? Okay. That closes our general public comment period, and we will move into our first agenda item. And welcome Bob Tryansky, our Director of Behavioral Health Services, to come up and kick us off.
Crossing my fingers. There we go. First time I've done that without having to talk to myself while I was doing that. So I'm having I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. Good evening, commissioners. Bob Tryansky, Director of Behavioral Health Projects. Tonight, we would like to ask for your support and endorsement for an idea that we have been working on for close to 2 years in terms of trying to find a solution to a challenge that we faced as our programs and our housing aspirations have grown, and the availability of housing has not kept pace. So as I said in my agenda item report, Behavioral Health Court has had supportive housing provided by Bert Nash since its inception in 2017. And over the last 8 years, as Behavioral Health Court has evolved, the need for supportive housing for Behavioral Health Court clients has grown. And as a result of our collaboration with Bert Nash, we kind of find ourselves today in a situation that I would say we got to through collaborative default thinking or collaborative default problem solving versus design thinking and design problem solving. So when Behavioral Health Court came online in 2017, Bert Nash provided one crisis respite bed at a 4-bed housing unit called Bridges. And over the course of several years, the number of clients in Behavioral Health Court needing supportive housing has grown. So I think it was in 2018 or 2019, we expanded the number of beds to 2 beds at Transitions. And then the programming model at Transitions changed from a 24/7 supervised facility to more of a step-down unit, step-down transitional housing program as Transitions came online. And so what happened as Transitions came online, the staffing model at Bridges changed as we got to a point where through our contracts with Bert Nash, we were providing for 3 housing units or 3 housing beds for behavioral health clients, 2 at Transitions and 1 at Bridges. Now, as we've reviewed the costs for that and the efficiencies for that, we've run into some problems. I'm just going to give you the background here. And also, I just want to say that what we're trying to do tonight also is to achieve one of the objectives of the supportive housing plank of the CHIP and in A Place for Everyone, which specifically calls for adding 15 supportive housing beds for justice-involved individuals. To date, the supportive housing options for behavioral health court clients have been limited to Bridges and Transitions. Bridges is no longer supervised 24/7. And this creates a little bit of a challenge because Transitions is a congregate, high acuity, transitional housing program for people with serious and persistent mental illness. That model is not always completely aligned with a client from behavioral health court who might be living at transitions. So it's potentially disruptive to the clinical milieu and the programming model at transitions. It's not necessarily the best living or housing situation for somebody who might do better in a single unit or living with a roommate and living more independently. But the default was we have space at transitions that we could use. We could put these clients in the transitions space. Rent is expensive. Between the time that we started doing this in 2017, where the cost of reserving a bed day was about $35 a day, the cost is now $100 a day. So if you have 3 clients at $100 a day, that's $3,000 a month. The county is spending some significant dollars on subsidizing and providing for this very important need. And as I said before, Burt Nash and Douglas County, and when I say Douglas County, I mean members of our admin team, I mean Judge Picorni and the Behavioral Health Court team, Criminal Justice Services. We have been having conversations about the needs for justice-involved individuals to have housing and some of the challenges that we face. The Behavioral Health Court teams, we have 3 beds available for Behavioral Health Court. The Behavioral Health Court team estimates that we could really use 5 to 7 beds. So in October of last year, Burt Nash was approached by a new landlord in this space to the community, or a potential new landlord to this space in the community, Sims Properties. And they had 2 fourplex units that they were acquiring that they wanted to offer to Burt Nash for potentially a master lease agreement to provide supportive housing. Matthew Falk and Burt Nash reached out to us to talk about this, and we had several conversations with the landlord. We had several conversations with our team. Like I said, since October, we've been having a lot of conversations to see if we could come up with a model from this opportunity that might have a lot of benefit. So here's what we're proposing to do, and I would call this a proposal for an 18-month experiment. So we're not buying anything, we're not making any long-term commitments, but what we do want to see is if we can make a collaborative partnership work. Burt Nash would enter into a master lease agreement with Sims Properties, and they would serve as the property manager for 2 fourplex units at 500 and 506 Colorado Street. Douglas County will contract with Burt Nash to reserve the units for specialty court and community corrections clients. Each of the 8 apartments has 2 bedrooms, so that would allow the project to serve 8 to 16 community members at a time. 1 fourplex would be devoted to specialty court clients and be prioritized to serve behavioral health court clients. Supportive services would be provided by Burt Nash. The second fourplex unit would support probation clients and be managed by community corrections, criminal justice services, our justice system county partners. The units are flexible as they can be, occupied by 1 person or 2 people. So there's some flexibility there that is good. The single double occupancy units offer an alternative for clients who might not thrive in a congregate living environment. The project would add 8 to 16 supportive housing beds for justice-involved individuals. The project will open up 3 beds or 2 to 3 beds at transitions for clients who are more suited to the transitions clinical model. So it gives Burt Nash an opportunity to be able to accommodate patients that they can't accommodate right now because we're occupying 2 beds that may not be the right beds or in the right environment. And so the rent costs per bed per day would be reduced from $100 a day to $35 to $68 a day, depending on whether the units were single occupancy or double occupancy. We also believe that rent could offset the cost of this model, but we don't want to start by making any promises about, and we want to be sort of realistic about what it's going to cost to get this up and running. And then there would be opportunities for additional collaboration with a new landlord partner in the community. When we have conversations about supportive housing, one of the things that just keeps coming back is that we don't just have a housing challenge, we have a landlord challenge. We don't have enough landlords in Douglas County who are willing to rent and lease properties that are appropriate for supportive housing. So anytime we have a new potential partner, there's possibilities that this could be the first of several projects. And so that was something that really appealed to me as we thought about this project. What questions do you have so far?
Bob, are these move-in ready units?
No. So if we were able to get this going by between the first 2 weeks of July, it would be a phased opening. So what we would have is we have 2 units that come online in July, and then the rest of the units would come online in September. So it gives us some time to transition. It gives us some time to set up 2 units and make sure that works well. So they are not, I mean, they will be move-in ready. Yes, but there are some things we will need to do to the units. Cameras, there's some things we want to add to the units so that we'll be able to ensure that everything works well. Did I sound as scattered as I felt like I did when I said that? Okay.
Sims Properties, are they local to Douglas County? Because I heard you say they were local. Or are they like landlords or property owners coming in from another county or state and, buying properties here?
Good question, and I'm going to turn that over to Matthew to speak to a little bit because Burt Nash would be the master lease, would be
Mhm.
between Burt Nash and.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, Commissioners. I'm Matthew Falk, Director of Housing with Burt Nash. Brian Sims is the owner. He's a local gentleman. He's a private owner of the company. It's what he does. He invests in properties, but he is an individual private owner.
And local to Douglas County?
I believe so. Yeah, he lives here.
Thank you.
Other questions so far?
How will you be tracking the outcomes for this particular initiative for the 18-month experiment?
Good question, and I will get back to you. We do not have the answer to that yet.
When do you think you'll have the answer?
I would say probably I would say that we would be ready by September when the second set of units come online.
Okay.
I mean, to some degree, it would be, part of that question is a question for our justice partners, and they are working on policies and that piece. But a lot of the outcomes for the behavioral health court clients are things we already track.
Okay. All right. And so would these be outcomes that you think we would like track on a dashboard or track in a report, or how do you think they might be visible to
I would think
our
they would be
partners?
tracked in reports.
in
So,
reports?
I think we could get a little bit more detailed on this particular project through our reporting that comes from Burt Nash quarterly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bob, the basic objective of this project is to reduce cost, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a kind of a threefold purpose, right? It's a both and. And so, one is to reduce costs, but the second thing, which is even more important, is to offer more housing to more people at a reduced cost. So this would go from 3 clients who are receiving services and housing at Transitions and Bridges at a very, very high cost because Transitions is staffed 24/7. So when we look at the data from Behavioral Health Court, one of the things we've all learned is that there are 3 to 5 people out of the 22 to 26 clients in Behavioral Health Court in a year who are consuming most of the service costs of the whole program. So 3 people absorbing about $200,000 in service costs in the course of a year. That is an interesting number to drill down on and to have a little bit more understanding. That's one of the reasons why we're doing the specialty court process evaluation. We're trying to get a better handle, a different handle, a more nuanced and detailed handle on how those programs are performing and what they cost.
I want to also add that in addition to that, this is for the justice involved clients, for the clients of community corrections and court services, this is a service we don't have available. Many of those folks have felonies that it's difficult to rent to. So this is really an opportunity that those folks do not have right now and we desperately need. And I think in addition on the behavioral health court side, this is about a better fit. I don't think it's necessarily about saving money. It is about this will be a better fit for those clients and for the clients that are at Transitions and need that environment.
Well, and it could open up 3 beds at Transitions to Medicaid or Medicare people that they can't handle now.
Yeah, and I would just, it's typically 2 beds at transitions. There have been times where we've had 3 clients in transitions, but it's 2 beds at, according to the contract, it's 2 beds at transitions and 1 bed at Bridges is what we've been doing.
And I believe I also heard that you're desiring to prove out the model. Is that what I heard
Well,
initially?
I mean, yeah, I think what we're trying to understand is if the single unit or double occupancy units that are occupied through master leasing, is that scalable and is that sustainable?
And so if you do find that it is scalable, right, and that it is good for the population that you're serving, what are the next steps? Or have you thought through what those next steps might be?
I think it's way too soon.
But I would say that this is a similar model that we've used in a variety of different programs in the community. It is similar to what Burt Nash does with their other housing programs outside of transitions. It's similar to other supportive housing model programs that we have with other providers. This is just with this particular population, how is this going to work? So we've been working in this space for a while, and every time we can have an opportunity to find a landlord that's willing to work with us, we really want to try to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Bob, this is Commissioner Kelly, just a quick question. What conversations have you all had about those who might be living there after the 18 months?
Matthew, would you speak to that in terms of how it works at transitions? Because I think it would be similar for the timeline.
Well, I think there's a 2-part answer to this question. One part, it really falls on the justice system and what kind of policies they want to set for their program in respect to duration, time length, and what expectations they have of people going through the behavioral health court process. Some of those conversations we have definitely started and had. In the transitions program, we try to limit our transitional stays at 12 months maximum. Our average stay is 4 to 5 months. Typically within that time frame, we're able to locate housing within the community and transition people into those locations. And that's been our average since we started the program. Well, I guess it started at about 4 months. It has creeped up to about 5 months as the housing stock that's available locally has shrunk over the last few years in respect to our target population. There are individual policies that will need to be worked out in respect to how behavioral health court itself operates. For example, if someone graduates behavioral health court while they're still in the program, how do you manage that? You have someone who's no longer in the program who's filling a bed. So again, this is going to really depend upon how those specific policies are worked out. Otherwise, 18 months would be a very long time for someone to be in a transitional program. In respect to our experience, it would be very, very unusual for someone to be there that long. So I don't expect that anyone would be there for 18 months.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just completely lost my train of thought. Are there other questions? No. So what we're asking for, this is not possible unless we redistribute or redirect existing dollars. And as commissioners are familiar with, and Burt Nash is familiar with, we reallocated health insurance dollars several years ago to target specific programs. Some went to transition, some went to the ACT team, some additional funds went toward the sliding scale. So what we're proposing to do is to repurpose those dollars that were directed to the ACT team for this purpose. We just feel like we took a step back and we pushed pause on ACT funding last year. We haven't made any additional progress on that, and this would be an opportunity to sort of use these funds in a way that we could get a result that we'll be able to measure and see.
Bob, I believe you had another slide after this, right, that started to talk about timeline. Am I imagining? I was
It's
like,
pretty
it was
simple.
there
It's just-
and you went back, but.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. July, the Douglas County would amend the service agreement to repurpose ACT funding to support justice-involved housing. Burt Nash would execute a master lease agreement, and the first 2 units would come online. So we could begin to move in. In August, more planning to transition folks who are behavioral health clients in existing housing to the Colorado unit. That will take some time and require some planning. And so that gives us the summer here to be ready to kind of take advantage of the final quarter of the year. And there's work that needs to be done. I mean, the units need to be furnished. We need to do some, we're talking about, would it make sense to have a peer specialist living in one of the units like we currently have at the cottages to be kind of a resident advisor to those units? So those are the types of conversations that we're talking about. It doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time having those conversations if the concept doesn't feel like the right fit to you all.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. Commissioners, did that bring up any other questions? I appreciate the presentation and the thoughtful redirection of some funds, and certainly appreciate your point, Bob, that to fully frame out kind of all the metrics and outcomes that we'll want to track and think about what does success look like and what does scalability look like and sustainability, to know if the commission is on board with the ideas presented. It makes a lot of sense to me. I'm excited about the prospect of a landlord that specifically is interested in partnering on a project like this. And so I think it's really, it's significant bump up in scale already in terms of the dollars that have been expended on trying to support housing transitions and housing stability for folks in behavioral health clients, and then not always having a very straightforward path for other criminal justice involved folks to navigate. That this is really, to Bob's point, sort of a multi-layered opportunity that creates some new pathways. And I think that it has the potential to give us a lot of opportunity to learn about what works, what might not work so well, and what does a addition to a project like this look like, or a reframing of it for a different population exists, facing different particular barriers. Because, to Sarah's point, this is not necessarily it's not a brand new model, but it is plugging in different, or it's more focused on different partners and the partners that would be making the referrals, the requirements, stipulations, and court orders related to that is obviously a unique thing. So I think it'll be a good learning opportunity, and I'm excited about 8 units and the possibility for 16 people to be impacted by one property is significant to me. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I thought of 2 other questions. Would the number of units assigned to behavioral health court and the criminal justice folks be fluid? In other words, if one group needed more units than the other, you can.
At this point, we think it makes the most sense to actually keep those 2 units separate and prioritized and clearly defined. And may we come back and say, oh, we think that our original design to be, kind of more rigid about that. But I think all the partners agree, let's keep the specialty court and behavioral health court clients together, and let's have the folks that are being served by community corrections live in the other unit.
And the other question then, Burton Ash would lease both buildings, even though maybe only one of them would be used for behavioral health folks.
Burton Ash would be the property manager for both units. They would provide supportive services to the people who lived in the specialty court.
Thanks.
I have another question, Bob, before you go. So currently our agreement with Burton Ash is for them, we set aside funds for those individuals who are with behavioral health court to be housed in those 3 beds. If we are moving the ACT funds to do that, where are those dollars going?
That is a good question, and I think that requires further conversation.
Yeah, and I think as we get through the specialty court assessment on the behavioral health court, we'll be able to be better informed on that decision, but it might allow more funds available for services. We'll need to see as we get through that process.
Commissioner, I believe I need to go back and review the contract, but I believe actually the bed costs for 2 of those beds are embedded in our operational support for transitions, and 1 bed cost is embedded in the budget for behavioral health court services.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you have any follow-up questions to that you're chewing on?
No, I'm chewing on thoughts, but I don't have follow-up questions. Thanks.
Okay, just checking. All right, any other questions from commissioners before I go to public comment? Okay, go ahead and open this. Thank you, Bob. Open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the building who would like to provide comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Any virtual hands, Sarah? Okay, we will close public comment. Bring this back for any further thoughts, discussion, or motions.
Maybe I'll just share what my thoughts were as I was sitting here pondering that. It seems to me that we are partnering with Burt Nash in a very similar way that we've partnered with them to serve our behavioral health court individuals now, which is fine. I think that's good, and this seems like a way to lower costs. Since we're just using 2025 already allocated budget, that seems fine to me. Because this is an 18-month project, I'd like us to have a more elaborate conversation about it with the 2026 budget, so we're clear on are we increasing the behavioral health court budget? Are we increasing the Burt Nash? But like, which budget are we increasing here? I know that the partners overlap in a lot of ways, but just trying to make sure we're clear on where that service agreement ends and what funds are in the behavioral health court budget. I'm supportive of this. I just trying to understand which bucket dollars are in.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Yeah, I tend to agree, and I don't know that anybody here knows it off the top of their head, but I was trying to think what our timeline is for that specialty courts assessment and when we will have some information back. I want to say it was before the end of the calendar year this year, but certainly
Katie?
not in time for our budget conversation. So
I think Katie has that and she's coming
oh,
forward.
thank you.
Commissioner Kelly, right now, it is in a separate line right now, not in the behavioral health court budget and not in the transitions budget, but obviously we can talk through all that as we go into the 2026 budget process. Katie?
Katie Fitzgerald, the Criminal Justice Coordinator. So our process evaluation, it was the first phase of the specialty court evaluations. The researchers are going to be doing an actual site visit to do court observations. We anticipate in July. And then they have there were several delays kind of on both ends as we got that initial evaluation process or that initial process evaluation started. So we anticipate that the process evaluation, you're correct, we will not have before the budget. But we anticipate that that will be early fall, that we will have that. And part of what they anticipate doing during their site visit and court observations is also starting to lay the groundwork for gathering all of the data for the outcome evaluation as well, so that they can kind of start which they're kind of starting now, where they're able to parallel process at the same time outcome and process evaluation, streamlining that, and then ideally more seamlessly moving into the outcome evaluation September, October, probably.
Thank you, Katie. Any other questions, commissioners? Thoughts?
Maybe this is a question for Sarah. Sarah, would we be taking 18 months worth of rent out of the 2025 budget, or are we already committing 2026 dollars?
I think I'll let Bob answer that.
Okay.
So if you were to approve this tonight, we would use the remaining $154,000 for ACT for the remainder of the year.
2025.
For 2025, and we would propose in the budget a line for justice involved transitional housing for $200,000, which was the ACT allocation, which it's been that for 2 years. So I think one opportunity here is by separating these out, we can start to better understand what the real service costs are for clients in behavioral health court, because I would suggest that when we look at it, those costs have been inflated because those clients have been living at transitions.
Right.
So this is an opportunity to kind of unlink some things that were pushed together, as I said before at the outset, because we were trying to meet a need and our partners were trying to meet us halfway in doing that.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Bob. Thank you for explaining it.
Agree. And I will appreciate the opportunity to better understand the costs that go into behavioral health court with this separated out, knowing what a sort of heavy load and or impact it has been in recent years' budgets. So I think that will be helpful for us. Okay. Commissioners, are we ready for a motion? Any other questions percolating before we get there? Okay. I'll go ahead and make a motion. This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve redirecting $154,000 of the Burt Nash 2025 ACT funding allocation to support the implementation of a justice-involved supportive housing program and to authorize the county administrator to execute an addendum to the 2025 Burt Nash service agreement to support a master lease agreement between Burt Nash and Sims Properties to manage the units.
This is Commissioner Kelly, second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All right, passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Matthew. We appreciate your work on this and excited to hear how it goes. With that, we'll move on to our second agenda item, and I believe Bob is back with us, actually, and I'll let you introduce it.
I am back. This item is an update from our partners at Headquarters Kansas. Headquarters, as you know, operates the statewide 988 network and answers calls locally through the Douglas County Crisis Line. We heard from MRT and ECC earlier in the year, and this is an opportunity to have a sense of what trends are we seeing in terms of data for the crisis line and for 988, and an update on where last year was a year of a lot of transition and change at headquarters, and so we thought it'd be a good opportunity to have you have a chance to hear what has been happening there. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan Watkins. Dan is the Interim Executive Director of Headquarters Kansas.
Get past annual report so she can.
I got it. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Commissioners, Sarah, appreciate the opportunity to visit with you about headquarters and the important work it does and its part in Douglas County's crisis response team. You know, we're happy to be a member of that team, and I've really enjoyed collaborating with Tony and Sonia at ECC and Bob and the other partners in the Douglas County operations. And I particularly enjoyed participating with Dr. Menkoff and the work he's been doing as you develop this crisis response operation. In a minute, Carly Williams, who's our Director of Quality Assurance and Compliance, will take you through the slides and discuss what's been going on the past year at headquarters. It's been a busy year. I was appointed by Judge Simpson almost a year ago to be the interim director. And I've learned a lot. Carly will tell you about a lot of the things that have gone on, but I also wanted to recognize some of the key members of the headquarters team as we've rebuilt operations over the past year. Megan Bridges is a longtime volunteer at headquarters and part-time employee who came on full-time in March as our Director of Crisis Services. So she's managing the call room and the chat and text and all the people that work there. And we're really pleased to have her. She's been doing great work since March, full time. Kirk Vernon has been with headquarters for 3 years. He was in law enforcement for 28 years. He heads up our community partnership operation, and he's been very active in the crisis intervention team and stepping up the diversion program. Maddie Bacchus heads up our Hey HQ operation, which is a youth program that's growing, and she's been doing great work. Sharon Rose is in my law office. She's the project manager. Sharon and I have worked on receiverships, mostly for financially troubled entities, mostly health insurance companies around the country for almost 30 years now. So I think that's why Judge Simpson asked me to come in and help, work on headquarters issues and help rebuild operations. And I think we've been having some good success. So I'll turn it over to Carly. She's been with headquarters before, left, came back. We've had a number of people come back, and she's one of the key ones helping us help the people who are calling us, okay, and then analyzing who it is, what they need, and how we can best help them. So she's a good person to take you through what's been going on at headquarters.
Well, thank you, Dan. I hope y'all don't mind. I can talk for literally forever about headquarters. So I do have my phone on airplane mode and timer up here so that I don't take literally all night, but I'm probably gonna take a little extra time. I really love headquarters. As Dan said, I've been there since 2020. I used to serve as our call room coordinator. I left in hopes of pursuing slightly different options at Burt Nash's MRT for a while, and then had health and life decide that I needed to come back to headquarters in a little bit more of a program management position. So I've been really grateful to come back. And I got to see all the change that's happened over the last year. And really a lot of that is attributed to Dan and the changes that he helped steward. I think we're in a massively better place than we were, because realistically part of why I left was because I could feel the instability of how we were running things. It was before anything had occurred. And so to come back and see that we're in a better place has been really wonderful. But I do just want to briefly, and maybe not so briefly, let you guys know what we're up to these days, because we are a crisis line that has been existing for a very long time. And what we do in each chapter has kind of changed. So I just wanted to take you through what we do right now. Our little mission statement is pretty exact. We provide accessible suicide prevention, education, and 24/7 crisis service. We build collaborations to help Kansans connect with mental health resources and build resilient communities. But specifically, we've been serving Douglas County since 1969. I won't go through all of the little markers here, but in your guys' packet, you can see that we have a very long history in Douglas County. And though we have grown to serve 102 of 105 counties primarily, like as we're the first line of defense for 988, we have always maintained a very strong focus on Douglas County and serving it specifically, while we also provide for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which again is now 988. And so 988 went live in 2022, and that's when we really started seeing a lot of change really fast. That's also when the CCBHC model came to be. Mobile response teams are starting to happen. And in fall of 22, we partnered with Burt Nash to help dispatch the mobile response teams. We started taking their crisis calls in spring of 23. In 24, we partnered with the ECC to create an acute system of referral for the mobile response team. And as of this year, we're starting to take calls from the treatment and recovery center as a triage, because the reality is some of those calls turn into crisis calls. And why we do that is really going to be explained through this kind of busy, but also very thorough behavioral health crisis response system. So if you look at it, a person in crisis who calls, they either call our local crisis line number, they can call Burt Nash's number, their phone tree will reach us, or they can call 988. There's some catch calls there we'll talk about later. But 80% of those crises can be resolved over the phone through a crisis counselor. So we're providing that service through all of Douglas County right now. And so I think that's a really key thing to remember is that through that phone crisis counseling model, we're able to have a least, like, maintain that least invasive model, least restrictive, least involved with the rest of resources, and really support that person in that moment, in that space. So I think that's really important to point out. I realize I haven't actually been looking at my notes because I think I'm just rambling off the top of my head. Make sure I didn't miss anything important. Yeah, like I said, the biggest thing I think that is a really important thing is that while 988 has been a really great tool to help shorten the long number that used to be the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, now it's 988. The way that it operates and why it's really important to keep our local number, that 841-2345 number, aside from the fact that it's been part of Douglas County since 1969, is that the way that geo-routing works, and I won't bore you all with the details, but the 911 and 988 work differently in how they connect to the services. The way that 988 works leaves some people out of the equation. And so if you're not with the 3 major phone providers, if you dial 988, you may get to a different center than your most local one. And so why it's important, especially for Lawrence, Douglas County people who, Douglas County is really made up. I mean, honestly, most of the people that are at headquarters right now and sitting in front of you have numbers that are not Douglas County numbers. And so depending on what carrier they have, they might not reach our center. And really depending on what's going on, that can be a really critical misstep. And especially since we do work really closely with Burt Nash. I remember when I worked at the mobile response team, one of their, when I went to show up at the DARE Center, the director who, at this point, a lot of people know Brett Hartford, really awesome guy. He was frustrated with his experience with 988 in our line because the messaging had been like, call 988 and you'll get connected. But the reality is he had just moved here. And so he was going to Indiana when he called 988. He wasn't getting our center. He wasn't able to access mobile response. And so we've cleaned up some of the messaging around that, but I think it's just really important to highlight that those two things work very differently. And that's why it's really important that we not equate the fact that like 988 can replace our local number. So that was the part that I was like, wait a second, I'm gonna miss that. So now getting into the numbers. If you look at 2024, we had 172 mobile response referrals come through 988, 272 through our local lines, resulting in a nice, lovely 444 total mobile response referrals to Burt Nash specifically. So we were able to really help facilitate a lot of support that year. If you look at our numbers, kind of our call data, it's kind of getting funky up there. The printout version, I believe, is a little more legible, but we served just over 37,000 contacts, 16,300 through 988, about 8,800 through our 841-2345 number, and then just under 1,000 through us taking calls from the Burt Nash crisis line. If we scoot forward to as of the day that I pulled it, and it was like midday, so these numbers are constantly changing. But as of about midday, May 31st, as of this year, we've got a little over 15,600 contacts that we've served so far, 6,400 through 988, 2,800 through our 841-2345 number, almost 900 through the Burt Nash crisis and TRC lines. So if you remember from just one short slide ago, that's about double the volume since we've started assisting with the Treatment and Recovery Center. We have so far had 110 total mobile response team referrals, a little more 50-50, about 64 through the local lines and 46 through 988. And so we really, despite anything that's happening, it's, again, really important for us as an organization, no matter how much work we do across Kansas, no matter how much we support 988 and the national suicide prevention efforts, that we always have a really close eye on what we're doing in Douglas County. And so we've tried to make sure that the way that we're doing that right now is by supporting Burt Nash and being able to provide some of their over-the-phone crisis services.
Can I ask you a quick question? Excuse me.
And I can scoot back a little bit.
With the providing support for the Burt Nash crisis and now the TRC lines, are those calls coming both as from patients directly, self-referrals, or are they generally happening as a referral from a staff member, or is it both?
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Just
get
curious.
a lot of different things. So basically right now, and this is, so our crisis service director, Megan, is taking on the rest of this project where right now, we don't have good data on like how many calls we're getting from which of those extensions. Because if you call Bert Nash's line right now, they give you an auto answer attendant and you can press 1 or 9. Both of those come to us and the way they show up for us is the same. So we've also done work, and I'm going to probably get into this a little bit more of like the personnel and operational stuff that we're doing. We're really combing through our data and trying to figure out how to track best and comb apart and figure out how we find the best numbers to make sure that we're having the best outcomes that we can. And so as of Monday, July 1, we are going live with finally having, on our end, we will be able to see which of those calls are coming directly from the treatment and recovery center and which are coming from like the crisis line. So that also helps prepare our counselors mentally a little bit more for like what they're going to be talking to that person about. We have worked closely with the treatment and recovery center to have a very robust, frequently asked questions. Like we try to redirect as much volume away from them as we can and really support their programs that way. Yeah. Is there any other questions about like the numbers or that? Yeah, of course. Okay. I'm going to try and go pretty quick on this because I could definitely take a lot of time and I think I already have. Oh no, my phone locked. We've had a lot of personnel and operational updates. You know, as Dan mentioned, it has been a year of growth and change. A lot of times that growth and change comes from tumultuous times, and it's surely not the first time that we have had a tumultuous chapter at headquarters. And so, like the previous ones, we have made it through. I think one of the coolest things that we have done over this last year, and one of the things that was hardest for me to try and manage in the position that I was before at headquarters, is that we didn't have a model of staffing that allowed for us to like hire directly into counseling staff. You essentially had to be a volunteer first. The only training model that we had set up was this very long, like really designed for volunteers only. And in the last year, we've made changes to that. We've adapted that, and we now have 32 full-time and 32 part-time staff. That's not all counselors, but a large group of that has been able to come in through our ability to adapt and change our training model to allow for us to hire more directly. It's a work in progress. We have actually a new training group that's about to start. It's our first time training someone like one-on-one directly. So each opportunity we're really leveraging as an opportunity to learn and see how we can better support operations in a way that makes sure that 10 years from now, 10 more chapters from now, we're still able to provide really excellent counseling services. Since last year, we have gained, it's 5 different, but we only had, I think, 1 licensed staff this time last year, and we have 5 now. I also think it's cool that I wanted to point out there's 3 people who are working at headquarters and have been for a while who are now pursuing post-secondary education in social work fields because of the work that they're surrounded by. We've contracted with a really awesome person from the School of Social Welfare, Dr. Michael Ricchino, for clinical oversight and supervision, as well as Forbes Mavadars to help with some of the financial operations that were going on. But, you know, we've always been a place where we really hold dear the value that we are a learning space. Realistically, like people can get into the field of mental health and never have gone through suicide intervention training. And so we aim to make sure that we're a space where people can come learn how to do crisis counseling. And realistically, we've got folks who've been volunteers in the past at almost every institution around Lawrence, which is pretty cool. So we take that seriously, and we're taking that seriously moving into the next chapter to make sure that the quality of our services stay really, really quality, I guess, which has included developing a whole quality assurance, compliance and training team. We've got over 25 years collective experience and 2 people who have returned, myself as one of them. Another was an overnight counselor for like a decade at headquarters. He's returned. He was on our mobile response team as well. So he's got a wealth of knowledge. Hired our crisis service director. Our HR specialist has provided a ton of stability and been a huge backbone for how we've been able to build out the rest of this. Got a staff accountant. So all of these changes are really, really, really strengthening our operations. And again, trying to make sure that no matter what types of changes, federally, state-wise, internally, whatever the case may be, that we're able to continuously and always provide services and be here for another 55 years. included with that, again, we've been working really closely with community partners. We're starting to be able to take practicum students from KU again. That was something that we lost out on last year during the changes. That was a pretty big loss in a lot of ways. We lost the opportunity to have those folks support our operations, and then also, again, to be able to train them and to have people who are leaving our space with the knowledge that we're able to give them. And it is a very unique learning environment. We will joined the Suicide Fatality Review Board, again, started taking Burt Nash calls in a different way. And we've really maintained a lot of engagement with Stepping Up and CIT Council initiatives. Again, we've trained our counselors in a new way to be much more robust and able to be flexible and resilient to the staffing needs. A lot more quality assurance practices. A big thing that we've made sure to do is contract with IT support and other, like we have a new phone system, got a generator a while ago, but all of these things are to really, and again, very robustly support 24/7 continuous services no matter what happens. So if all of Lawrence loses power, we can still provide that service. And that it led to some short-term little glitches, as technology changes. And anyway, I'm sure that we had to interface with it. It comes with frustrations. And I think we've gotten most of those growing pains out of the way, hopefully. So we're excited to be where we're at now. We've really solidified secure financial controls, a renewed commitment to timely, well-documented practices, payments, repayments, reimbursements, rectifying outstanding audits, really trying to get into a place of financial health, which again, much is accredited to Dan. A short list of our goals for the future is to just be able to really recruit a board, executive director, get the very upper echelon of how we run to be also at a point of stability. We really want to restart the in-house counseling clinic. So that was a really cool service that we were able to provide Douglas County citizens. It was a donation-based therapy through the licensed clinicians that work at headquarters as well as interns. So we're really hoping to get that going again. It's a unique service that we were able to provide. Continue to develop our community partnerships, rebuild our capacity to provide more community trainings and then volunteer opportunities. That's one of those ways that we've also retracted that we'd like to really build back out. And then of course, just maintain our financial and operational health. And like I said, make sure that we're doing things and we're building our practices in a way that we at least don't have the same problems that we've had in the past. And we can make sure that we continue and whatever that looks like. Because again, I'm sure we'll have lots more changes. What it's looked like over the last 55 years has changed a ton. And we will meet every change with resilience and ready to support the community. So just that's where we're at now. And again, I appreciate you guys letting me take a little extra time. I'm very passionate about headquarters and the work that we do. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I got a question. I've got two phones sitting up here. This one has a 785 area code. This one's got a New Jersey area code. Now, if I dial 988 from here, do they both come to you, or does the 988 on the New Jersey phone go to Tom's River or somewhere?
It depends whether you have AT&T. Oh my gosh.
I have Verizon.
Verizon and Sprint, I think, are the three major carriers. T-Mobile. I couldn't remember who bought who. And I just said it and already forgot. So those AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon are the three major carriers. If you have those three major carriers, if you dial 988, it should go to your closest service provider. If you have Boost, if you have Cricket, if you have other types of phones that especially people who are maybe have a little less stability in their lives or a little less income, those types of easier to access phones, those are going to go to whatever. If you had a Cricket wireless phone for your New Jersey number, it'd go to New Jersey. And so that's partially why, yeah, it's just an interesting way of doing things. But that's how 988 ended up putting that infrastructure out. And I think that there's plans eventually to maybe get all of the carriers, but even just to get the three major carriers online has taken 3 years. So it's slow going. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that overview. I really appreciate kind having a picture of sort of the status quo and some background on all the work that's been done diligently to figure out how to make it through. And so I really appreciate that update. I'm curious a little bit about the change in staffing model and the volunteer program. So 2 questions about that. One, the 32 full-time and 32 part-time staff, about how does that compare to what the staffing was before things got to crisis mode?
Well, I will say most of the staff prior to that were interns, so they were paid
Okay.
interns. So over the summer, we would have a staffing crisis.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any way to rectify that. We just, whoever was around, I begged, and they would hopefully come in. And so that's partially where also double whammy, no longer having interns as a possibility, because the instability that we were facing at that time meant that KU wasn't comfortable with us being our practicum space. So it was a loss in a lot of ways, because the bulk of the paid staff that we had were interns.
Okay.
And so the way that we would be able to schedule and just kind of getting the boring operational aspects of that was really, really, really unsustainable and not comfortable for anyone, really.
Sure.
But we've really done a lot of work. And I say we, at this point, it's not me. I did a lot of the work at the beginning and have passed it on to folks like Megan to try and figure out a way to create really sustainable staffing and then start folding in interns and volunteers again. That shouldn't be the backbone of how we run something as critical as 988. So we've really adapted, I think, to that pretty well.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, that helps. And you answered my second question, I think, which was just, was there still a place for volunteer program to sort of be a support or a pipeline of towards that employment? And it sounds like that's a goal and an aspiration, but staffing right now is the focus.
Yeah. And I will say we're still training volunteers and we're still getting interns. So we're back on track with KU. I think we've got 3 interns. One of them is a Fulbright scholar, which is always fun to host them. And so we're opening the doors on that.
Gotcha.
I think we have, oh, Maddie, you just said this today in the meeting, 5 active volunteers, as far as like non-paid counseling staff that come in. So we're slowly rebuilding that capacity. It does exist already, but being able to figure out how to run that many training programs at one, like that's part of where like we're still very much in like learning and adapting and making changes and just figuring out how to make it work mode. And we've learned a lot.
Sure, that makes sense to me. Thank you for the explanation. And I, there's a saying that what you focus on gets bigger. So fundamentally, if that's, as an organization, you've decided that really having foundational staffing as the backbone for productivity in this space and being able to maintain the service, then it makes sense to me that you would focus energy and space on that and think about how to incorporate what's been a strong volunteer program, but incorporate it in a bit more of a sustainable way.
Yes, exactly. And we never want to lose that. Again, like, especially as someone who's been in the field in a lot of different ways, like I don't want to lose our ability to give that knowledge to people on a volunteer or an intern or a practicum type basis. And that's also why we want to create more opportunities for community trainings, which we provide those as well. Assist and Kirk's team provides community-based trainings like that. And so that is definitely a value that we want to maintain and we don't ever want to get away from. And we couldn't run operationally a call room based on only volunteers and interns. So it's just that we've had to pivot really hard on what probably should have been focused on a couple years ago to make sure that when we launch, because realistically going from that long 1-800 crisis line number to 988, we were projected for a long time to get a 400% volume increase. And there was really no strategic planning around that. And so what we're doing now is honestly a lot of going back and doing what should have been built out a couple years ago while all of that change was happening. And we're able to do that, I think. And there's a lot of people working really hard to make sure that we don't lose the values that we do want to keep strong, or again, the quality of our training along the way.
Thank you. Commissioners, other questions?
Thank you for your presentation.
Of course.
Outside of the annual report, how does headquarters tie its funding to outcomes?
This might be a question better answered by Dan. I as far as financial compliance, that's less my wheelhouse. I'm more clinical compliance and what we do with that.
Well, the first metric is your answer rate, but then it's breaking down who's calling, what they need, and that's all a work in progress as we work through Carly's quality assurance, looking at who's calling. And we have a number of people who are what you would call regular callers. So we're trying to do contact back with those people so we can help them not have to call quite as often. But in terms of how you tie it, we've got 24/7, 365 coverage, and you have to have a certain amount of staff to do that and a certain amount of budget to do it. We're working very hard to drill down on everybody who's calling and what they need and making sure that they get what the referrals they need and the help they need. I don't know that I could quantify it in metrics right now, though.
Well, I think I understand your question a little bit more now. It's more about clinical outcomes.
We just make sure you use the microphone. Sorry for anybody, for the recording.
Sorry, I have such a loud voice. I forget that I got to make sure to do that for the folks that aren't in the room. I can definitely appreciate that. Yeah, so I think I was understanding the question is a little bit more like financial outcomes rather than like clinical outcomes and how we're investing in that. And so what Dan said was all very relevant. And again, a lot of the work that Megan's doing, a lot of work that I'm doing is going in and combing through and making sure we can track things. Like we don't, our clinical record is bulky and not the most efficient thing. So we're making sure to work harder on figuring out how to leverage the tools that we have to track outcomes better. But again, how we do it right now is like, how much staff do we have? What is our answer rate doing? Of that answer rate, we're breaking it down. Like, yeah, who are familiar contacts? Why are they familiar? Like, why are they calling so often? Are they calling our local number? Are they calling through 988? Are we able to offer them follow-up resources? And that's also where at one point we were going to have a lot more of ability to do what's called like clinical coordination of care or more intensive follow-ups. But that didn't quite get launched before things retracted last year. So I think that's also something that we'd like to be able to be more robust in the future. But I guess part of your question is right now we're combing through how to create a good dashboard for outcomes, because that's not been something that has been looked at heavily in the past beyond answer rate, which is a very helpful metric.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for, to understand if you were going to be publishing something that others could look at moving forward, or if you already had something that was built.
We have a lot of information. We're trying to make sure we analyze it and make it work for the people that are calling.
Thank you.
I'll just say that thank you for the presentation and the highlights. I really appreciated reading the report too. So thank you for putting that together. And I really respect and appreciate the directness and the humility that the organization has had about addressing what happened and what was uncovered as a part of that to better understand what restructuring and reorganization could look like and do for the success of the organization. So that's sort of that detailed section about financial stewardship and the opportunities for improvement and to really strengthen it. I just really appreciated reading that and want to compliment the agency and staff for deciding to do that and to be transparent about it and to really lead with showing what internal changes you're making and what you hope for that to manifest in terms of external partnerships and progress in our community. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, like Dan said, we had a lot of stuff to share. So the annual report definitely, and for those, I'm not probably close enough for the mic, for those who are not here, the annual report does have a lot more detail. It was kind of hard to create the tip of the iceberg to tell you the immense amount of work that's gone in, because realistically it has been a lot of work. And I'm really appreciative of everyone that's been doing that. So thank you for the opportunity to come forward again and just let you know where we're at right now versus last year, and that we're able to be received with patience and understanding that we're an imperfect organization and we're trying to maybe not strive for perfection, because I don't think that's real, but for long-term stability in a way that was not centered previously.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. Well, this is an item with public comment. Is there anybody in the room who would like to provide public comment on this item or presentation? Okay, seeing no takers, any virtual hands, Sarah? All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back for any further comments or discussion amongst commissioners. This is, I don't think I said it at the top of this, but this is information only. There's no action on this item. So commissioners, any other thoughts before we move on?
I just want to echo Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Anderson's appreciation for the work that's done. We have to put the people in our community and people outside of our community who need these services at the center of the work. And Megan and Dan, your presentation tonight really highlighted that. Like, we're going to make it work, and we may need to make an adjustments, but it's clearly not about you two. It's about the people that you're serving. So I really appreciate that work. Thank you.
All right, thank you all again. With that, we will complete our regular agenda for the evening, move on to appointments. And I forgot again to double check my email and see if we had any at the top of the,
I don't think
List.
so.
We have one that we
Oh.
just need to keep in mind. That's to the solid waste plan, Sarah.
Yes,
Oh, that no.
I think I can say this proxy. Commissioner Willie has expressed interest in serving on the solid waste board, unless another commissioner is interested, taking that spot. She's interested in doing it.
that tracks, and I might have wagered a bet on that. I would be happy to defer to Commissioner Willie for that. Thanks for remembering it, Commissioner Kelly.
I don't think we-
Maybe we should wait and make a motion when she's actually here
Fair
to
enough.
fairly appoint her, but she did tell me she was interested, so we can do that next week.
Okay, thank you. Any other appointments to discuss, Commissioner Dorsey?
Not appointments.
Okay. We'll close appointments. With that, we'll move on to Administrator Miscellaneous. We want to start with Sarah's memo. Is that okay, Commissioner Dorsey?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll be quick. Your memo's in the packet. Commissioners, there is a tour of the Tenants to Homeowners and Peasley Tech project on Friday at 1:30. That information is in your packet. Then we have a groundbreaking for the 9th Street Missionary Baptist Church on Monday. And commissioners, next week, we do not have a work session. So we will start at 5:30. That's all I've got.
Just to follow up from last week when we discussed drafting a letter to Senator Moran regarding the Haskell Nation Indian situation with budget, and Commissioner Willie and I worked on a letter. We've got it completed here. We used auto pen to sign all the signatures on it.
Assuming the
And-
commissioners are okay with that, don't want to jump the gun.
So I just wanted to make sure it's okay to send that letter out.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorsey. I appreciate your quick turnaround on that and work on it. I personally had an opportunity to read it and I'm okay with it. I don't think I see that it's scanned into,
We've not added it
or-
to the packet yet because it just
Okay.
happened right before the meeting. So we will get it added to the packet
Yeah.
if you approve it tonight. I didn't know if you'd have changes.
I've read it and I approve.
but Commissioner Kelly, I don't think has had an opportunity to review it.
I did.
Yeah, and is there urgency in the timing? I'd like it to be sort of public before we send it out in case there's public comment on it. Is there urgency? I mean, I'm sure there is.
Well, within a few days. I don't think we want to wait 2 weeks or whatever.
I didn't know if last time did we have it as a formal agenda item when we did the letter earlier this year?
I think we just did it.
Yeah, we didn't have it as a formal agenda item. We published it in the memo,
Okay.
had a little bit of discussion like this at miscellaneous. We didn't have it as a formal agenda item that we opened up public comment, but we did have it published in the agenda. So I do, to Commissioner Kelly's point, think that that might be important to do if we, if there are no revisions of note in this discussion and commissioners have reviewed it, if we can publish it to the agenda at least, I would be comfortable with that instead of waiting for another week, but I'm open to other thoughts.
Yeah, I'm fine with the letter. I read through it between the work session and our general business meeting, so I'm fine with the letter. I want to make sure that we are fully noticing our community on our communications like this.
Agreed, we should publish it. Because we did publish the last one. I believe we had an edit between actually sending it and publishing it last time as well. And then we republished it and sent it.
So if that's what we want to do, I can have Robin add it to the agenda for this week's meeting, but we won't send it. So then we probably will change the date, take the signatures off, and then you can all vote on it or decide if you want to do anything different next week at next week's meeting.
I think
Go ahead.
I think I understood it actually that if nobody has any revisions, because now that I've confirmed that all commissioners have had a chance to review it, Commissioner Willie's not here, but she helped draft it with Commissioner Dorsey, that if there are no revisions, that as long as we publish it to the agenda so that it's available for the public
Okay.
to read in tonight's agenda, it can stay dated as June 18th.
Okay.
And this discussion is consensus around the content, no revisions needed.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I thought maybe Commissioner Kelly wanted time for the community to review it.
Ideally, but that's why I was asking, what's the time frame that we think legislation on this at the federal level will happen?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't quite know where Senate is at with their timeline on voting on budget in general. So, but to your point, Commissioner Kelly, I think that, in the future, if we were to do further correspondence like this, to just try our best to have something published to the agenda for public review in the event that there were comments. I think we had a good overview from Commissioner Dorsey during last week, kind of about the issues at hand when we agreed to move forward with having this letter drafted. And I do think that sooner is better than later.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold it up. I think we in my time on the commission, I think this is the second, maybe the third time we've done this. So we just sort of needed to sort of set some practices around this, maybe. I'm fine with it.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you for that, Commissioner Kelly. And thank you again, Commissioner Dorsey and Commissioner Willie, if you're listening later, for drafting that. Sarah, do you need any further clarification or direction
We'll get
from
it
us?
added to the packet below my manager's memo for this week's agenda, and we'll get it sent out.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorsey. Appreciate it.
Anything else, commissioners, for the good of the order? Okay, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.